This is a MJ production. Good day and a warm welcome to you all. My name is Marius, and on this YouTube channel there will be different series, and one of the series is called the Disability Sport Talk Show. In the Disability Sport Talk Show, I'm going to focus on different disabilities like visually impairment, cerebral palsy, paraplegics, etc., and therefore also different sporting codes. In some episodes, my guest and I will introduce you to a certain sport, and in other episodes, my guest and I will discuss more technical aspects of a specific sport. If you have any questions or suggestions, you are welcome to post it in the comments of this YouTube channel. Or you can go to the Facebook page, MJ Productions Shows. M for Mike, MJ Productions Shows. Legend has it that rugby had its origin 200 years ago in 1823 when William Webb Ellis picked up the ball during a football match and started running with it. However, there are sources that disagree with this. Regardless of when, where and how this sport originated, it remains a sport that millions of people around the world are enthusiastic about. For more than 60 years, the visually impaired have played rugby, but it has always been at an informal level and has not been recognized as an official sport. Blind rugby is a recognized sport today. Jack Pearce, rugby player from England, tells us more about the formal format of this sport. My first question was, when and where does blind rugby start?
Originates from a company called the Change Foundation, which is a charity based in London that kind of set up programs for various groups within society that perhaps don't have access to equal opportunities. So they do programs such as they started blind cricket, they did cricket for refugees, they do a lot of work with kind of perhaps people that like they do netball for single mums, a lot of like campaigns called Street Elite that's about sort of like positive choices for young people to make. So all sorts of different programs like that. And the sport originated from one of their employees who was visually impaired and keen to give rugby a try, but there wasn't really a sport that was aligned to it. So the Change Foundation began to establish the rules for the sport back in about 2015-16.
How does blind rugby differ from able-bodied rugby?
The main adaptations are that it's sort of similar to touch rugby. So it's 7-a-side. It's played on a pitch probably 2/3 the size of a normal rugby pitch. And yeah, it's like a touch version of the game. So the attacking team has 6 tackles to try and score, a bit like rugby league. If they get touched, then they've got to put the ball on the floor, step over it, and then that starts the next tackle. We usually use like brightly coloured balls, like yellow and blue, for example. The ball will have like ball bearings in it that makes the ball rattle when it's passed, a bit like ones used in football. And then the kind of slight classification that you can play is kind of from roughly like B2 to B4. So that's like in a sporting context, sort of B4 is you're severely visually impaired, but you've got like useful vision, all the way down to B2, which is you've maybe got tunnel vision and you're quite restricted in your peripheral, or perhaps struggle quite significantly with like distance, things like that.
You talked about the B2s, B3s and B4s. Are the B1s also allowed to play?
Yeah, I mean there's no rules that say that they can't. B1 is like could do. We originally, when the sport was forming, there was sort of like 2 codes of the sport. So the Change Foundation did like VI rugby, and then a foundation that coming out of Worcester, another district in England, did a sport called Rugby, which involved predominantly like B1s, and there was a bit more. There was some variations to the rules, like there was contact in their sport. You would have like guides on the pitch that would support the people classified as blind how to play. But over like sort of the last couple of years, the sport's sort of streamlined to specifically VI, because it's a little bit safer, obviously, without the contact, and probably slightly better like spectacle to watch. And the rules, there's a bit more clarity around the rules. So yeah, it's completely up to the discretion of B1 players. Like they'd be more than capable of playing in some capacity, but generally speaking, most people that play are within sort of B2 to B4.
The eyesight of a B1 differ between totally blind and light perception. The eyesight of a B2 differ between light perception and 2 on 60. It means that what a sighted person can see on a distance of 60 meters, this person can see it on a distance of 2 meters. The eyesight of a B3 differ between 2 on 60 and 6 on 60. What is the sight that a B4 has?
Yeah, so similar really, but B4 like it encounters your field of vision. So my classification, for example, is 660. So growing up, I was B3, but when they introduced the field of vision test as well, because my field of vision's not impaired, that takes me into like the B4 category. But yeah, it's quite similar really. B3s and B4s there's not too much difference.
How does the ball look and sound like?
It's exactly the same as a normal rugby ball. The color of the ball is usually like quite like a yellow, quite bright yellow color, and then it has like ball bearings in it. So if you shake it, then it rattles. So if you're passing it over a certain distance, then you'll be able to hear like the direction that the ball has come from and where it's coming to, which obviously helps.
But how does the ball sound like? Let us listen to an audio clip. If I understand you correctly, blind rugby is touch rugby. You don't make your normal tackles.
Well, so this is blind rugby's kind of rebranded itself within the visually impaired system. So it's all under the umbrella of visually impaired rugby now, which is just touch rugby. Yeah.
You tell me that blind rugby is sevens rugby, but if you include the substitutes, how many players can you have in your squad?
There's no regulations on that at the moment. So last year when we had a tournament in France, we took 11 players. The Ireland team that travelled as well, they probably had a couple more. So yeah, there's no regulations on that at the moment. Yeah, it's rolling subs, so you can interchange as many times as is necessary.
In blind cricket, there is a rule that prescribes how many players of a specific category must be in the team. What is the situation with blind rugby?
So at the moment, our participation numbers are probably not quite the same as the cricket. So at the moment, we don't have quotas, but I think that is something that going forward, if the sport becomes more established and more, as the sport establishes itself more and becomes more affiliated with like higher achieving competitions and things like that, then that's something that will have to come into place, obviously, for fairness. But yeah, at the moment, there's no set quotas on how many B2s or B3s you're entitled to have on your team.
Is it an indoor game or do you play it outside?
Outdoor, yeah.
What is the size of the field of play?
So roughly sort of 70 meters by about 40 meters. So yeah, it's kind of like 2/3 the size of a rugby pitch. Quite often for training, we use, if you imagine like a full size rugby pitch, we'd play just in one half. So the two touch lines of the full size pitch would be the try lines, and then 50 meters to the try line would be the touch lines, as like a rough estimate. 7 to 10 minute halves, depending on the competition.
In able-bodied rugby, there can be serious injuries. What is the situation with blind rugby?
Yeah, your muscle injuries. You can obviously with having people that perhaps don't have the ability to see each other, then you occasionally get bumped heads and things like that. But yeah, generally the injuries are much less severe than you'd get in able-bodied rugby. And there's certain rules that have been adapted throughout the game to make it safer. So we don't have any kicking in our game because sort of people diving for the ball caused injuries when the game was first introduced. So yeah, things like that to make the game a bit safer and a bit more inclusive are a part. So injuries wise, yeah, nothing major, touch wood, since I've been involved.
In able-bodied rugby, the weather can play a big role, and I assume the same for blind rugby. But are there any other factors who can play such a big role? Maybe noise of the crowd or environment?
Yeah, I'd say you've hit the nail on the head there. Really, the weather can be significant. We try and align our season with the summer so that it's like a touch. Sorry, it's a summer sport. So instead of playing loads over the winter when it's a bit dark and the pitches are boggy, we try and avoid that. And generally, our season kind of aligns from sort of February to October. Obviously, if it's really sunny, that can be a factor for some people depending on the conditions that they have. But yeah, if you needed to wear a cap or something to be able to play, then that's fine. Aside from that, yeah, not like noise pollution can potentially be a factor, but I guess that's you've got to work as a team to work out how best to communicate if it is really noisy or things like that. So that that can become like a competitive advantage if you're able to do that well. But yeah, I'd say the weather is the main one that we've experienced at the moment.
Is blind rugby a Paralympic sport?
Not yet. That's the dream.
Are there any plans to make it a Paralympic sport?
Yeah, I mean, think the sport's still very early on in its inception. It's been around for less than 10 years. So, a lot of the people that are involved with the sport at the moment are really passionate for it to progress and become aligned with the IBSA or the Paralympics. That'd be amazing. But yeah, we're not quite there yet. I think we need to have our participation numbers increase and things like that first.
Can the ball bounce just as well as in able-bodied rugby?
Yeah, I mean, it's a normal rugby rule, so the ball would do that. One of our rules is that if the ball goes on the floor, then that counts as one of your tackles. So yeah, if the ball goes onto the floor, then there's no like competition to try and get it back. There's no rucks or diving on it or things like that. It's just you just reset the tackle from where the ball is dropped. And if you were on tackle 2, for example, you'd lose a tackle, so then your next one would be tackle 3. So yes, physically the ball does bounce, but that's not a part of our game.
How do you handle lineouts and scrums?
So lineouts and scrums are uncontested, but they're quite a fun way of restarting the game. Obviously, from the perspective of the attacking team, it's a different platform, it's a different picture to try and manipulate the defense. Yeah, they're when the people that created the sport, a lot of their focus was on trying to make the sport look as realistic to mainstream rugby as possible. Yeah, that they were factors that were involved. If there's a forward pass, then we reset with a scrum, and if the ball goes out of the pitch, then it's restarted with a line up.
So when the ball is out of play, the attacking team put the ball back in play.
Correct. Yeah.
And scrums?
Yeah, same. So if one team commits a forward pass, then the opposite team would then restart the game with a put in. Well, obviously, as it's sevens, it's just 3 in the scrum, and it's uncontested, so the opposition team can't push. But yeah, it's just a way of restarting the game, and like I mentioned before, it's an exciting platform for the attack to try and utilize the extra space.
Are there mauls?
No. Once the player's been touched, then the defending team has to retreat 5 meters, and then whilst they're in the process of doing that, the attacking team pull the ball down through the legs, a bit like in rugby league, and then an acting scrum half will pick up the ball, and that's how the game's restarted.
How often are there international games?
We have had 2 competitions aligned with the Rugby World Cups over the last few years. So last year, teams from France, Ireland, and England went to Toulon to play competition in France. In 2019, an England team went out to Japan to play a series over there. 2017, there was a British and Irish Lions team that went to take on New Zealand. So they've been the 3 main blocks of internationals thus far. In the Northern Hemisphere, we're trying to create a Six Nations tournament, hopefully sometime later on this year, but if not, definitely next year. So probably average like every 2 years or so. But that is something that we're hoping to increase over time with extra participation and so on.
How many countries play blind rugby?
Yeah, so there's probably about 6 at the moment. So you've got New Zealand, Japan, England, Ireland, France, Wales are pretty much established as a team. And then there's interest from other countries as well, like USA, Fiji, the Netherlands. So again, that's something that the sport is hoping to sort of double over the next few years. The number of participating countries that compete internationally.
Overall, are there any challenges that blind rugby had to face? Maybe the availability of officials, volunteers, sponsors?
I'd say the main thing at the moment is trying to get get partation up within the countries that are playing. So the kind of buy-in from everyone is really good. We've had lots of discussions recently in the last couple of years about how best to align our sport, whether we're going to align it with touch rugby, with the RFU, with World Rugby, like how best that looks for us. So I think, obviously within that becomes conversations around funding, things like that. So I think there's, it's we're very much at the start of our journey here, which is really exciting. But I think they're the kind of things that people within the sport are really excited to progress and improve.
Are there any yellow and red cards in blind rugby?
In theory, yes, but that's not something that ever really becomes an issue.
How do you handle penalties and conversions?
You wouldn't, if there was a penalty, you wouldn't like kicking for goal wouldn't really be an option. In regards to conversions, on previous tours, when we went to Japan, we had conversions. Same in New Zealand. When we went to France, we found that actually it just slowed the game down, and it didn't really add to the spectacle of the game. So we didn't do conversions on that tour, and we just if you scored a try, you got 5 points, and then you restarted the game at halfway, which from my perspective was probably a bit better because, like you say, it's quite a fast game. You want high tempo and fitness and things like that, and having rests for kicking it wasn't really necessary.
How common is the game amongst female players?
It depends where you are, really. Within the island setup, there's quite a lot of female players, which is great. We don't have too many in England at the moment, but it's something that we're looking to expand. But again, going back to participation numbers and inclusion and just getting the word of the sport spread out. Hopefully, those things will come with time.
In wheelchair rugby, you can have mixed teams. Do you think it is possible for blind rugby?
Yeah. So there were females on the Irish team that competed in Toulon, and again, there was no quotas on how many you had to have or anything like that. So if they're keen to play, then they're more than welcome to.
In my research on blind rugby, I read about visually impaired rugby and blind rugby. What is the difference between the two? Are these two different formats of the sport?
So originally that was the case, yes, but they're all under the umbrella of visually impaired rugby now.
What is the best way for people if they want to get involved with blind rugby or want to start it in their country or just want to follow the game?
The best place to probably go would be the Change Foundation website. They have lots of information about the visually impaired rugby program, and they have PDFs of the rule book, which is obviously useful for starting up. You can also follow the England visually impaired rugby team on Instagram or Facebook, which is at VI Rugby. They're probably the two main places where you can find information about the sport. From those links, if you message on the Instagram or if you email people from the Change Foundation, they'll be able to share extra details or answer any questions that people may have with regards to starting up the sport. Generally, what's happened in the past is that coaches from Change Foundation have gone out to different areas to kind of set teams up in those areas, teach the rules to their coaches, and then the sort of people in the local area kind of take it from there. So they've coaches from the Change Foundation have flown out to New Zealand, to Japan, Argentina, I think as well, obviously Ireland. So that's generally how the process happens at the moment in terms of getting teams started in new areas. But prior to that, you'll be able to find information on those two places, like I mentioned. So the Change Foundation website, and then the VI Rugby program, and then also on Instagram or Facebook, which is at VI Rugby.
Is there an international body with a website with the rules and other info about the sport?
So at the moment, the program is run through the Change Foundation. So whilst they're based in England, it's under their umbrella. They're very, very keen for it to become under somebody else's umbrella, whether that's British Blind Sport or World Rugby or the RFU or Touch Rugby, whatever that may be. That's sort of ongoing conversations that are happening at the moment in regards to what the sport's going to look like going forwards.
What about blind rugby make it special for you?
I grew up kind of playing mainstream rugby, and I was quite heavily involved in the visually impaired football program in England for a bit, and I sort of did all right as a consequence of being a decent athlete. But my passion was for rugby. So when I found out that an adapted version of the sport had been created, I was thrilled, and it's given me the opportunity to meet loads of like-minded people to myself, people that share the same challenges in life, but are keen to overcome them. And then, obviously, it's given me a chance to better myself. Like, it's massively motivating for my life, to be part of the England team and to have something of purpose to work towards. And I've been able to visit some amazing places as a consequence of it, such as Japan, such as the south of France, Dublin. So yeah, there's loads and loads of benefits to get involved with the sport. But yeah, I think the main one is the connections you make with people, that your teammates. You've all got that common impairment that you want to overcome together. And I think the sort of bonds that you create with people are pretty special. The sport is very inclusive, and we have people that have very limited sight, and it's just part of our tactics where we position them on the pitch, and the strengths and weaknesses that they have. But usually we'll have somebody on the sideline that's dedicated to like helping them out with attack, defensive line, the sideline, things like that. So yeah, if the sport is more than welcome for fully blind people to get involved. No, I think I'll just reiterate some of the things I said before. The sport's given me loads in my life, and it's very much at the start of its journey, but the future's really bright and exciting. And the more teams that we can get playing, the more opportunities for people to play, the more we can showcase the sport, the bigger it's going to be, the wider its reach will have, and hopefully more and more visually impaired and blind people across the world can experience the benefits that I've had.
This brought us to the end of episode 4 of the Disability Sport Talk Show. A big thank you to my guest, Jack Pearce. He is a rugby player from Northern London, as well as Alex Besson, the Director of Business Development at the Change Foundation, who also helped me with info. You can visit the website of the Change Foundation at www.thechangefoundation.org.uk www.thechangefoundation.org.uk. For more information about the rugby balls, you can visit the website of the Royal National Institute for the Blind. You can visit the website at www.rn for November, IB, B for Bravo, .org.uk www.rnib.org.uk. In the 5th episode, referee David Jacobs will tell us more about wheelchair rugby. Till next time, goodbye and stay safe. This was a MJ production.